Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today in this bye week. So, we have some things to talk about, all right? Obviously, the path to a bowl game for the Gators is pretty straightforward, right? Gotta win 6 games. I don't need to explain that to you. But we're going to talk about UF's chances in a moment because what's more important to me is how they continue to play. But there's some interesting things that could happen as the season progresses here. Today's video is presented by BetUS. We sincerely appreciate their partnership with us this season. It has been awesome so far. We'll talk more about them in a little bit, but let's dive right into this. So I think kind of the most important linchpin here for whether or not UF makes a bowl game and how the rest of the season plays out is if DJ Lagway can make more good plays than bad. I have talked on this channel for months at this point about the differences between Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway and how I think that Graham Mertz has a higher floor and that DJ Lagway has a much higher ceiling than Mertz. And I think that we saw that on display on Saturday against Kentucky. You know, you were going to get those ESPN top 10 plays out of him. But every once in a while, you're going to get a freshman mistake. And that is absolutely not a knock on DJ Lagway, who I think is an incredible talent. And I think he could find himself in New York before his time in college football is done. Absolutely. And then I think he'll be a day one draft pick. But he's still getting some on-the-job training right now in the toughest conference in college football. And he's about to run the toughest stretch of any team possibly ever in college football. So we are going to see some freshman mistakes. But the linchpin here is whether or not we see more good plays, meaningful plays, plays that score points than bad plays out of him. And that's going to be a key to all of this. Another thing that's going to be a factor here is if Florida's offensive line can continue to be solid up front. We have seen them improve behind DJ Lagway. I think a lot of that is DJ Lagway. This is a mobile quarterback, and he functions better behind maybe not the best offensive line in the world than a Graham Mertz would. But Kentucky had a pretty darn good front seven on defense, and Florida's offensive line was solid. Are they going to be able to continue to be reliable against really good fronts? They're going to see it against Georgia. They're going to see it against Texas. They're going to see it against LSU and Ole Miss. They're not going to see it against Florida State. But can they continue to be solid, to be reliable, give him a little bit of time to make some magic happen? And then the other thing is going to be, can they count on their defense to continue whatever in the world they've done since the bye week? Florida played really well defensively against UCF. They played phenomenally against Tennessee. And then we saw it again against Kentucky. Now, I have some questions about what changed over the bye week. Why was that not a change that could have been made into the offseason? What would those first couple games against Miami and Texas A&M look like had we been playing with this defense instead of the defense that took the field the first few weeks? I have questions, right? And I don't know that we're ever going to get them answered. But right now, Florida's defense is playing great, particularly up front. Are we going to see that trend continue as we move on to tougher competition? And then the last thing's going to be, can they beat someone they're not supposed to? Because that has to happen for Florida to make a bowl. Right now, they have lost to 3 ranked teams, and they have beaten 4 pretty bad teams. I mean, I think you could say Kentucky is okay. But outside of that, everybody that they've beaten is not a good team. Before we go on, I want to give BetUS some love. You can go to BetUS and use our code YouTube150 for a 150% bonus on your first deposit. Your second and third deposits are still a 125% deposit bonus. All of that up to $2,000. BetUS has a phenomenal customer service and great lines. If you haven't bet with them yet, get to it. Appreciate BetUS for their support. Go check them out. So right now they play 4 more ranked teams and then Florida State. They are going to have to steal one of those 4 ranked teams and then also beat Florida State to make a bowl. We talked about the FPI percentages earlier this month, but they have changed a little bit since Florida's win against Kentucky and that close game against Tennessee. So here's what ESPN is saying the chances are now. Georgia, 21% chance of beating them. I still think this is highly, highly unlikely. And obviously ESPN does too, if they think Georgia has a 79% chance to win. But if I am Napier, I study how Kentucky was able to play them so close earlier in the season. I study the first half of the Alabama game, and I see if I can make some magic happen. This is a game that all of these kids love to play in. It's going to be obviously neutral site, exactly half Florida, half Georgia. The environment is going to be rocking. This could go so far for Napier, just buying him some equity here, if he could figure out a way to pick off Georgia. Now, again, it's unlikely. It's very unlikely. But I think there is a path here, even though, like I said, not likely to happen. Then they travel to Austin. I do think it's interesting. ESPN has Florida at an 8.7% chance to beat Texas. And I find this interesting since Georgia beat Texas handily last week. Did Georgia give us a blueprint? Is there something we can look at and follow and replicate? I, again, also find this unlikely. ESPN finds it even less likely that Florida will beat Texas than that they beat Georgia. But a chip in a chair, right? Saying there's a chance. Then they come back home to Gainesville and they play LSU. ESPN thinks that Florida has a 41% chance to beat LSU. And I actually think that this game will probably be closer to a coin flip by the time it happens. This is the one I think Florida can steal to become bowl eligible. It's in the swamp. It's going to be rocking. If Florida plays Georgia and Texas close, and then they come home and play LSU, and we know we need this to continue that path to bowl eligibility, that stadium is going to be hyped. So let's look at what LSU has done so far this season. They lost to USC in a close one. I think at the beginning of the year, we thought this was kind of the battle of the Titans. That's not really what it's looking like at the midpoint in the season. USC is kind of mid, right? They barely beat a decent South Carolina team. They beat UCLA. They beat Ole Miss in a close one that went to overtime. They easily handled Arkansas. I think this is a team the Gators can hang with, particularly now that DJ Lagway has the reins. Then Ole Miss comes to town. Irony of all ironies will be if Billy Napier beats Lane Kiffin at Florida Field at the end of November. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but ESPN thinks there's a 24.5% chance it does. So again, there's a chance there, right? Reminder, Ole Miss lost to LSU in overtime. They also lost to Kentucky. Yeah, that Kentucky that we just really handily beat 48-20 just last week. So did Kentucky give us a blueprint for that? It's possible. And then we end the season in Tallahassee. ESPN thinks there is a 74.2% chance that Florida beats Florida State. That means Florida should easily beat Florida State. Now, we know this is a rivalry game, so it won't be easy for whoever wins because that's not the way that this series goes. You can kind of throw records completely out the window. But I think this has to be a win for Coach Napier. If you cannot beat Florida State in their worst season in recent memory, what are you even doing, right? If you watch Florida State, it is unbelievable the quality of product that they are currently putting on the field. And if Coach Napier in his third year cannot take advantage of that, it's not going to be good, right? I think the Gators absolutely steal this one Thanksgiving weekend in Tallahassee. I don't think it's going to be close. But is it going to be the one that puts us over and makes us bowl eligible? How apropos would that be, right? If they figure out a way to beat LSU or Ole Miss and then they go to Tallahassee to claim bowl eligibility. That would be pretty redeeming for Coach Napier. I think there's a lot of us that would have to maybe eat a little bit of crow if Florida ends up bowl eligible with the start that they had. Now, are these things likely to happen? Maybe not, but there is 100% a path to bowl eligibility, which, by the way, I think is also a path to Coach Napier keeping his job. All right, guys, let's thank BetUS for partnering with us on this video. We appreciate their support as always. And guys, it's the bye week. We've got lots of time to talk about all different things. So I'm going to have a lot of videos coming your way. Thanks for tuning in. As always, go Gators.